you're on the higher end of your mileage on the BMW V8, you definitely need to look into this. And this thing was basically just coming apart. I don't know how it didn't blow up my engine. It was just coming apart. So when I actually took the chain out of the vehicle, it was just coming apart on its own. It's magically to me the fact that it was running for so long. Hey, what is up, you beautiful people? How y'all doing? Welcome to another video, man. I'm so excited to be able to, film another one. It's been quite a while. As usual, we've been busy. Life is busy. But nevertheless, I'm here to update you guys on the next natural step of this whole rebuild process. So if you have seen on the previous video, we have successfully put together our entire bottom end, right? The rotating assembly, the crankshaft, the main bearings, rod bearings, rods, pistons, all that technical stuff that can be a little bit delicate has been put together, and we put and we've torqued everything down according to the torque specs. Okay, and on this video we're going to progress to the next part, which is putting together the heads. So as you can remember, we completely took apart the entire engine head, right, to be able to clean it thoroughly and also be able to not only do that but also do the valve stem seals jobs. And we also did a little bit of valve lapping to make sure that valve seats flush on the heads, make sure there is no leak in there, to make sure everything is running brand spanking new. So today we're going to put together the engine heads and be able to rebuild the head and be able to put the head back onto the engine block. So in typical fashion, before we go to the next part of the video, we're going to check back the comments from the last video to, pay some respect and appreciation for the rest of you guys, for the few of you guys who are not only following the channel, but also keeping up with everything and leaving your comments. I truly appreciate it. I still can't believe until this very day that there's actually people tuning in to watch me on my mistakes. And nevertheless, hopefully you guys are learning something as well. So the very first comment, probably won't be able to read the names here, but I'll try my very best. Huge respect for taking this engine out without a hoist. I did have help from an engine hoist, so we were able to pretty much fish the engine out of there. But I was watching your channel, man, the way you guys did it. I wish I was able to do that, to be able to just lift up the car and then just have the engine in there. That would have been so much better. But hey, we were able to do what we could with the tools we had in the garage. Your working on the garage floor reminds me of someone I know very, very well, and I do believe that. Great job, my friend. Let's break the barrier on negativity surrounding the S63 engines. And I mean, what people fail to realize is when you guys are buying these cars, these are high performance vehicle. Okay, these cars like the F10 M5, they used to cost well over 6 figures for a well put together F10 M5. So just because you're saving a little bit of money, well, frankly, you're saving a lot of money because you're buying a depreciating car that has more mileage into it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be cheaper in maintenance. In fact, it's going to be more expensive because the car now has more mileage into it, right? So just because you're buying you're going to be maintaining, still, you're going to be paying a maintenance on a 6-figure car, if not more expensive, right? Bullets Garage, that's an easy name, says, very nice video. I like all the in-depth details about the torque specs and how you put things together for the bottom end. And I appreciate you because I think the idea for this to go actually in details came from your last comment. And I decided to, okay, if this is what you guys want, I'll definitely go ahead and dive more into details. Even if it takes more time for me, I'll be more than happy to do that for y'all. What made you go with SCL rod bearings over King? And did you get rod bearings that are slightly smaller so there are more oil film between the rod bearings and the cranked? So the first question, what made you go with SCL rod bearings? Well, really two main things. Number one, I was talking to a lot of people around me, I call some shops that actually build BMW engines. There's not a lot of shops that actually build these engines. There's a lot of BMW shops that maintain vehicles. They'll do your oil changes. They might change your injectors and all this stuff here, your brake pads. But there's a lot of few shops that actually will rebuild engines. It's a very complex task. In fact, I call a few shops that like, hey, we've been in business for a long time. We just maintain these cars. We do not take the engine out and do all this crazy stuff. We just don't do that. But I was able to find a few shops. So look around if you're looking to do this. Look around the shops locally and then just build relationships and ask them. And I was able to find some good people that were able to guide me throughout this process, especially for somebody like me who have never rebuilt an engine before. Imagine jumping on an S63 platform, right? So I definitely needed the right connections to be able to answer simple questions like this. A lot of people tell me, hey man, there's not a lot of difference if you're not putting something together that you're going to be pushing like 1,000 horsepower and beyond. Okay, chances are you'll be all right. And also the other factor that went into this was just availability. It was much easier to find ACL raw bearings and just order them online, and within 7 days it's at your doorstep and you're ready to just throw it in the car. There's a lot of parts that you have to go through a dealer, order from somebody else, a distributor, and then it'll take so much more time. So to be able to just order that, there's a lot of parts for this engine that a lot of times are scarce. To be able to just order that and then it shows up on your doorstep and you're ready to go, that was a huge plus for me. The second part of your question, did you get raw bearings? They're slightly smaller. So when it comes to gap, it's a science. So for me, I just kept everything stock. The crankshaft, of course, is stock directly from BMW. The rods, the raw bearings, of course, were stock as well. I just did on the last video, you saw me do the measurements just to make sure everything looked good. But as far as changing the size, I didn't dive into any of that. Okay. I believe the last question says, where did you get the manual from with all the steps and the torque sequences? And that is a fantastic, amazing question, because if it wasn't for this, I would not be able to put this engine together down to every single bolt in this engine requires a specific torque requirement. You've seen it. You have to do it a specific torque spec in terms of Newton meters. And then you have to follow up with the angle torque to go a specific degree. I mean, it's so much that if I didn't have access to something like this, I wouldn't be able to do it at all, or maybe just do it. And then I'm pretty sure by the time I crank the engine for the first time, something will come loose, right? This is not one of those engines where you just tie it to whatever level and you're like, okay, well, that looks tight enough and call it a day. Of course not. So the program that you're referring to, it is called InstaD. InstaD or InstaP, there's different variables of it. There's ones for just maintenance and programming and tuning. It is a program that is a dealer specific program that BMW dealerships and high-end BMW shops use to be able to guide them through every single job necessary to be able to maintain your car, right? There's a few videos here on YouTube that will actually guide you through how you're able to purchase and download that program specific on your computer, which I recommend to any BMW enthusiast, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to jump on your car and start replacing rods and all that crazy stuff. And then you do decide to do that, you're definitely going to need it. But also for smaller jobs like changing the brake pads on the 5 Series on the rear, it's electronically regulated, right? You're going to need this program to be able to open up those pads in the rear to be able to change those pads. There's also, when I was rebuilding the engine, I wanted to replace the fluid on dual clutch transmission. BMW says it's lifetime, but nothing really is lifetime. I highly recommend you changing the DCT fluid. And when I had to change the DCT fluid, I had to be able to use InstaD to communicate with the control module to be able to electronically activate the pump to be able to squeeze every single ounce of fluid into the DCT. So you will need a program to be able to communicate with the modules inside the car to be able to do certain jobs. Not only that, but you're also going to need it for simple diagnostics, reading codes and stuff like that. It is the best software to be able to read codes for any BMW. So long answer, but I hope I have answered your questions. With that being said, again, guys, thank you so much for taking your time to drop those comments And I use this to be able to make the videos better for all of you guys, and also be able to, of course, answer all your concerns. I'm not an expert, of course, as you've seen when it comes to this, but I'll be able to, you know, relate a little bit of knowledge that I've acquired to do this to help you guys as well. So with that being said, let's jump on this section. We actually have a lot to cover in this video, so let's just jump right in. So as you saw on the last video, we took apart everything, came out of the heads to be able to clean it thoroughly. So after the heads were completely apart, it was fairly easy to do a valve stem seal job. So we were able to remove the old seals and be able to put the new ones in. Now, if you don't know what that is, basically it prevents the oil from going back into your combustion chamber. So oil is going to be sitting on top of the heads to be able to lubricate all the parts. Of course, there's exhaust and intake camshaft that is rotating at high RPM that needs to be lubricated, and a lot of times that oil is going to sit there. So a big problem that the BMW V8s have is the fact that the oil will go right past those seals and end up in the exhaust chamber, which will then burn, and that's why you get those blue smokes coming out of the exhaust. Now, the reason why this happened is due to the fact of the design. You have the hot V8 where the turbo is right in between the banks, meaning that your engine is going to be running very, very hot. And this is one of those things that you have to get it done. Otherwise, you're going to start having a lot of issues where the exhaust is going to be smoking, and you're going to end up having oil in places where you probably shouldn't, right? Or probably you definitely don't want oil in there, right? So again, this is one of those things that a lot of people will skim past. This is also one of those things that if you take it to a shop, it's going to be very expensive, but it has to be done. So a lot of BMW owners will just skip right past it, and that is where you start having a lot of maintenance issues and reliability issues. So with this being said, it was fairly easy with just you know, taking the old one out and then just tapping the new ones right back in. I did a valve seat job to be able to, I did some compound grinding to be able to make sure that the valves and the seats have no gap whatsoever, because what happened over time with the carb buildup in these engines, you know, with the internal combustion engines, there was a few places where it looked like on a microscopic level it was really beat up, right? I'm pretty sure it wouldn't affect the car that much, but since I'm here, I might as well get it done. That way I'm gonna have an engine that looks and behaves fairly new, and it's gonna do that for a really, really long time. Now, before we actually put the heads on the engine and attach the heads to the block, I actually went ahead and installed the front cover, the timing chain cover plate in there with the timing chains in there. Because the reason why is because there's a little gap on the heads. You will see where I had to apply a little bit of gasket maker to make sure that we actually gap those spaces in between the timing chain cover, the main engine block, and the heads, and also the oil pan, the upper oil pan. Okay, and after that, we just had to make sure that the notches aligned, that we installed the right engine heads, right? Of course. And these right here, you're going to be holding everything down with this big ass bolts to be able to hold the engine block with the heads. Right now, of course, again, these are expensive torque bolts, meaning that once they're in place in there, if you take them out, if you're gonna need to replace them again, because in order to install them, you're going to need to do a specific torque and stretch those bolts. So the Titan specs for the engine heads are so after that, once the heads are in there, then you have a more freedom and more ability to be able to tighten everything down with the exhaust and intake camshafts. It's a little bit difficult to install the exhaust and intake camshaft and tighten them down to a specific degree and newton meters if the heads are actually outside of the engine. Now that everything is bolted together and I have the engine on the engine holder, it's a lot easier to torque everything down. And of course, you have to make sure that we order and install the right gasket for this specific car, because we don't want any leaks in there. It's very important. So we're going to start with the exhaust camshaft, and it's fairly simple. All you have to do is make sure that you place exhaust camshaft in there. Now, of course, I made sure to lubricate the part where it's going to be sitting, where it's going to be rotating. There's a part here that it's a seal that actually the only seal in this engine where I did not change. In fact, this is the only part where it doesn't require you to change it for whatever reason, and that is the plastic ring that you'll see right on the exhaust camshaft in there. It also is on the intake camshaft, and there's a plastic ring. It says it right here that it is maintenance free and must not be renewed. Good thing, because I'm pretty sure if you had to renew it, I'm pretty sure those tiny little things will cost a pretty penny, although it's just, you know, a plastic ring. Now the exhaust camshaft also does something very interesting, which is it controls the rocker arm that goes up and down, that actually powers the high pressure fuel pump, right? It controls that little thing that goes up and down. So the actual housing for the high pressure fuel pump is actually one of the other bearing caps that actually holds the exhaust camshaft in place. So for now, we're just going to put the exhaust camshaft in there, and these are the Titan specs to be able to do that. And then we're just going to leave it in there, and then afterwards we're going to put the sprocket up in the front and be able to do the timing. So right after that, I then had to put in place the intake camshaft, and the intake camshaft is a little bit more complicated because it does require a special tool to be able to put the variable timing in there. So with the special tool, I was able to install the it's actually technically called the intermediate shaft, that is then used to control the intake. And this allows you to open up or close the intake, you know, change the efficiency, and then giving you more power. So more air is going to allow more air into the combustion chamber, therefore giving you a bigger bank and even more power. And that is going to be controlled with that little motor in there. And then it's going to have an intermediate shaft, and right on top of the intermediate shaft is going to be your intake camshaft that is going to control the rocker arms. Now there's so many smaller parts in this whole bigger scheme here that I can make smaller videos, and this is definitely one of them, because the intake here has a lot of parts that goes into it, and I can possibly make a video separate in the future if you guys want me to, just detailing all the specific parts here. So this is one of those things that make this engine a powerhouse, right? You're able to make so much power, but also be able to still be somehow fuel efficient. But it's one of those things that definitely will add a level of complexity to this motor. Now, after the intake and the exhaust camshaft is in place, it is time for us to start doing the timing. And this is very complicated, but of course very crucial, because if we do anything wrong in terms of millimeter or degrees, then, you know, things are going to be hitting each other, pistons are going to be hitting valves. It's not going to be a pretty sight. So with that being said, we're going to need yet another special tool, and this is there's a lot of things that are shared between the N63 and the X63. So like I said in the other video, there's a specific timing tool just specific for the S63, and I believe some variants of the N63, but this is one of those tools that it's definitely more expensive because it's specific for the M model. So once you have this tool, what it's going to allow you to do is, once you have the exhaust camshaft at a specific position, is going to allow you to lock this in place. Okay, so you need a tool to lock the exhaust and intake camshaft in place. And this is the position that they need to be in. So they're going to need to be in top dead center. Okay, now of course this is a very complicated procedure. I'm going to leave some links in this video below of other videos that actually goes into detail into this, but I'm just going to give you the overview that I was able to do here. Now when you get this tools, also should come with a chain tensioner that's going to apply some tension on the chain. It's also going to come with another tool that's going to allow you to lock the crankshaft at the top dead center for the crankshaft. So what is a top dead center at the camshaft? The camshaft over here, you can see the image. If you look at the exhaust camshaft, there's two banks, right? This is for the this is going to be for the left side, and as you can see here, it is going to be, if you look from the back of the engine, it has to be at a specific angle, and you're going to use that tool to lock in those camshafts at those specific positions. Okay, now On the crankshaft, of course, you're going to need the timing chain sprocket in there installed, and you're going to have to put the damper in there. Now, before you do all of that, you're going to need to install the timing chain, and the timing chain was under the issue. Now, in this whole process, this whole project, there's a lot of times, there's many times that I was actually a little bit excited or a little bit happy that I did what I did, that the fact that I had to rebuild the engine. Of course, the reason why we rebuilt the engine was because of the raw bearings that just gave out, and the crankshaft, went along with it. But there were a lot of parts that needed to be replaced. There's a lot of seals at the specific mileage that needed to be replaced. There was a lot of hoses that needed to be replaced. And the timing chain was also one of those parts that definitely needed to be replaced. In fact, this is one of those things that especially if you're on the higher end of your mileage on the BMW V8, you definitely need to look into this. And the reason why is because this is the guide that actually holds the timing chain in place. Let me see if I can get a little closer actually here. This thing was basically just coming apart, as you can see over here. So I don't know how it didn't blow up my engine, but the timing chain, but this is the other sprocket that held it in place, and the actual guides that this was running on. As you can see, this is the what puts the tension on the chain, and this right here goes like this, where the chain will just ride on it as a rail, but it was just coming apart. So when I actually took the chain out of the vehicle, it was just coming apart on its own. It's magically to me the fact that it was running for so long. So with that being said, of course, your boy needed a brand new set of timing chains for the S63 specifically. And as you guessed it, of course, it is not cheap, but I'm very happy the fact that I was able to find that and replace it. So the guides, we got brand new guides and brand new chains, and we're able to put that in place. And once that was in place, we're then able to close the timing chain cover. And then we had the tool to be able to apply the tension on the timing chain as you torquing everything down to be able to adjust the timing. Now, the main center bolt that actually holds the gears into the camshaft, of course, as you guessed it, has to be replaced because these are torque down bolts. Once you torque them down, it's going to stretch the bolt, so you're going to need new bolts. Okay. Once you have put the engine or the camshafts in the exhaust and intake camshaft atop that center, and once you have put the crankshaft atop that center as well, it is time to apply some tension on the chain and start tightening in the main bolts for the exhaust and the intake as well. And these right here are the torque specs for those main bolts. So after all that is done, it is time for us to actually enclose the heads. And after you install the heads and installing the camshafts and adjusting the timing, we're able to go ahead and install the valve cover seals and the valve cover. And this right here is the exact specifications and order to be able to bolt down the valve cover on the left side and on the right side. After that, we pretty much just turn the engine upside down. We're able to then install the upper oil pan. And also after rebuilding the oil pump, I also changed the chain that was on the oil pump, make sure that everything was tightened in there. After that was tightened, then we're able to add the cover on the back of the engine with the brand new sealed for the crankshaft on the back of the engine. And after that was done, after the oil pump was in there, then we were able to then install the lower oil pan cover. And this is an amazing milestone for all of us because now we have every part, everything enclosed in the engine. We have all the rotating assembly enclosed, and now we have our long block in there. I don't actually know, is it a short block or the long block? No, actually I think it's a long block, because the short block is just, well, just the engine block. But now everything is enclosed and sealed in. Now we have to work on all the accessories around the engine, and we still have to install our flywheel. But in order to install the flywheel, the engine will need to be held by the hoist and not the engine holder, because the engine holder is actually covering the access to be able to put the flywheel in there. So this is a big milestone for us. I'm very excited. I don't want to put this video too long. So on the next part of this video, we're going to wrap our exhaust now that we are in here. I'm also going to wrap my downpipes, and then we're going to do a few things, install the turbos, and start putting together the accessories around. And once the engine is actually in the car, I'm going to have to put the subframe on the front of the car and all the things that goes around the subframe. Okay, and once that's done, we'll be able to drop our engine back into the car. We'll be able to drop the heart of the beast back into it to then start, you know, installing other things. And we're going to need to add all the fluids back into the car. We're going to need to install the fuel lines and connect all the hoses the same way that I came out, and connect all the wires, which is going to be another headache added. But I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it, to be able to have everything back together. So again, guys, thank you so much for following this channel till now. I hope you are learning something from it. Let me know if you need any specific video on a specific part, on a specific system. Drop your questions down in the comments, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.